Hello and welcome to Africa Weekly on News Central TV with me, Joe Hansen. Now, this is where we bring to you the top stories that made headlines in the course of the week. We're going to begin from Monday all through the week, but let's start off with Monday. We begin in Uganda, where Yoweri Museveni was declared winner of a presidential election for the 6th time. With victory comes jubilation, but it seems Ugandans were happier not over another 5 years of their 76-year-old ruler, but over the restoration of the internet after it was turned off on January 13th ahead of last week's election. However, social media platforms remain blocked and are only accessible using virtual private networks. Ugandan journalist Bernard Yiga spoke to us on how Ugandans have coped without internet and what to expect from another 5 years of Museveni rule.
I can tell you it hasn't been easy since 13th of this month, when Uganda's communication regulator, Uganda Communications Commission, brought to telecom companies to switch off internet just hours to the country's general election. And I can tell you it hasn't been easy. Many Ugandans have been relying on TV and radio for news. They haven't been able to share via social media and other video or picture sharing networks. So it hasn't been easy. And as I talk right now, internet has just been restored a few minutes ago, about 30 minutes, about 6 hours today. It was restored, and as I speak, it's excitement all over internet as Ugandans share memories of what they missed as the country went into the pause. After garnering 58% of the vote against Chagulanyi's 34% of the total votes cast in the last previous election, his slogan has been securing your future. He has been saying for the last 34 years, Ugandans have been enjoying peace, and these more 5 years are going to be about securing the future of Ugandans. In his manifesto, the president talks about industrialization.
And to Egypt, where a court ordered a seizure of assets of former President Mohamed Morsi and 88 other members of the banned Muslim Brotherhood. The court also ordered for the assets to be transferred to the Treasury. Morsi died in June 2019 while on trial after 6 years in prison. The seizure applied to assets inherited by his family. The move also targeted the Brotherhood's supreme guide, Mohamed Badi, his deputy, Kariet al-Shatar, the former legislator, Mohamed Beltagi, and imprisoned. The seizure was one of several initiated by a commission charged with implementing the 2018 law on the organization and management of the assets of terrorists and terrorist groups. That same day, the Democratic Republic of Congo honored independence hero Patrice Lumumba. This marked 60 years since he was assassinated in a plot linked to the fledgling nation's colonial master, Belgium. President Felix Tshisekedi paid tribute to the charismatic politician at a site in the capital, Kinshasa, where a memorial was installed in his honor. Shot by firing squad by Katangan separatists and Belgian mercenaries on January 17, 1961 in southeastern Congo during the first chaotic months of independence, his body was dissolved in acid. Lumumba was ousted from his post as prime minister shortly after independence and then delivered to his death at the hands of the Katangan separatists and the mercenaries. Moving on to Somalia, where at least 6 people, including Somali army soldiers, were killed, while 8 others wounded in a bomb explosion aimed at targeting the convoy of the Lower Shabelle region's governor and military officials. The attack took place in the vicinity of Tishel, Lower Shabelle region, located about 50 kilometers southwest of the capital, Mogadishu. Police officer Billy Adan said it was a landmine explosion followed by a gun battle between the soldiers and armed militants belonging to Al-Shabaab militant group. Adan said Governor Sidi survived the attack, while heavily wounded soldiers were transported to the capital for treatment. Somali-based Al-Qaeda-affiliated Al-Shabaab group claimed responsibility for the attack via internet and said it targeted US-trained Somali special forces known as the NAB. Well, in Tunisia, the military deployed troops to at least 4 cities after violent protests spread across the country. A defense ministry official said army forces were deployed in the cities of Sousse, Bizet, Kesserine and Seliana to support police forces and protect sovereign facilities. In the capital, Tunis, eyewitnesses said police forces used tear gas to disperse protesters. Videos shared on social media showed protesters blocking roads and setting tires on fire, while security forces tried to chase and disperse the demonstrators. Demonstrators defied a curfew imposed to slow the spread of coronavirus and have taken to the streets protesting economic hardship. The protests came as Tunisia marked 10 years after the uprising that toppled longtime former President Ben Ali. Well, let's move on now to Tuesday. And on Tuesday, 4 people were killed by security operatives when opposition supporters took to the streets to protest against the presidential election results in Masaka district. The protest broke out shortly after the Electoral Commission declared the incumbent President Yoweri Museveni as the winner of the Thursday presidential elections with 58% of the total votes cast. The announcement didn't go down well with a section of voters in Masaka who said the election had been rigged in favor of Museveni against his National Unity Platform rival Robert Changulani Sentamu, alias Bobi Wine, who, according to the Electoral Commission, garnered 34% of the total vote. According to eyewitnesses, 3 of the people were shot by armed security personnel, while the 4th, an expectant mother, was tortured before breathing her last in the hospital. From Uganda to Nigeria, where troops killed 35 bandits and arrested 2 of their collaborators in different encounters in the northwestern states of Zamfara and Katsina. The defense headquarters said the troops engaged the bandits following credible intelligence on their movement with rustled animals at Bungudu local government area of Zamfara. The defense headquarters added that 2 suspected bandits were also arrested at Dungu Muazu village in Katsina State following a tip-off. It said the suspects are in custody for further action. Moving on to the northern part of Africa, in Sudan, the presence of heavily armed troops helped restore calm in the Darfur region after 3 days of inter-ethnic violence claimed at least 155 lives and displaced tens of thousands. The transitional government in the capital, Khartoum, deployed military units to the remote region where the recent end of a joint United Nations and African Union peacekeeping mission raised fears of more bloodshed. Violence erupted on Saturday between Arab nomads and members of the non-Arab Masalit ethnic group in El Geneina, the capital of West Darfur, killing at least 100 people and wounding more than 130. The clashes led around 50,000 people to flee areas in and around a camp for internally displaced people who were driven from their homes in previous conflicts. Still on security matters, in the Central African Republic, the UN spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric shed light on the killing of 2 United Nations peacekeepers in Bangassou Gambo axis after they came under fire. Speaking to reporters via video link, Dujarric said the UN mission in the country are now fully in control of the city. Dujarric also said the mission also reported that it escorted a convoy of 30 commercial vehicles from Bangui to the border with Cameroon. That's the first since the free movement of vehicles was halted on December 19th due to security situation along that route.
The Central African Republic, where sadly we have to announce that 2 United Nations peacekeepers lost their lives today. This happened on the Bangassou-Gambo axis after peacekeepers came under fire. We should have more details for you shortly, including a statement from the Secretary General. The mission also reported in a statement that combatants had left the city of Bangassou in Mbomu Prefecture on Friday, and that UN peacekeepers are now fully in control of that city. The mission also reports that it escorted a convoy of 30 commercial vehicles from Bangui to the border with Cameroon yesterday. That's the first free movement of vehicles since the free movement of vehicles was halted on December 19th due to a security situation along that route.
We'll go on a short break and come back with more stories. Stay with us on the program Africa Weekly. Welcome back to Africa Weekly. If you just joined us, we are actually giving you the stories, especially news that happened during the week. We told you on Tuesday that Rwanda imposed a 15-day lockdown on its capital, Kigali, as the country battled the second wave of coronavirus cases that has resulted in unprecedented deaths and transmission rates. This is the capital's second lockdown since the outbreak of the pandemic. The government said all movements outside homes in the capital will require an approved permit from the police, except for essential service providers. Travel between Kigali and other provinces and districts will not be permitted except for essential services and tourism. Tourists must have COVID-19 negative certificates. Public transport was also prohibited, and all employees in public and private sector were to work from home except for those providing essential services. Places of worship and learning institutions were also closed. The government also increased the hours of a nationwide nighttime curfew, which will now start at 6 p.m. to 4 a.m. And let's move on now to Wednesday. On Wednesday, we brought you an update from Monday's attack in the Central African Republic. The United Nations revealed the nationalities of the 2 peacekeepers killed during the attack near Bangassou in the Mbano prefecture. UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric, while giving an update to reporters, said the peacekeepers were from Gabon and Morocco. Dujarric also said the attack is believed to have been carried out by combatants from the coalition of Patriots for Change. The UN spokesperson said the Secretary General Antonio Guterres expressed his deep condolences to the families of the peacekeepers and to the people and government of both Gabon and Morocco. He said the Secretary General also reiterated his grave concern over the escalation of violence in the Central African Republic and called on all parties to immediately cease hostilities to engage in dialogue.
Central African Republic, we have a few more details on yesterday's attack in the country. 2 peacekeepers, one from Gabon and one from Morocco, were killed near Bangassou in the Mboumo prefecture. They were killed by alleged combatants from the coalition of Patriots for Change, the CPC. The Secretary General expressed his deep condolences to the families of the peacekeepers and to the people and government of both Gabon and Morocco. The Secretary General also reiterated his grave concern over the escalation of violence in the Central African Republic and called on all parties to immediately cease hostilities, to engage in dialogue, to advance the political process, preserve fragile gains, and fulfill the country's aspirations for lasting peace.
The number of people killed from clashes between armed militia in El Geneina, the capital city of Sudan's West Darfur state, rose to 159, with 202 others injured. The ongoing clashes in Sudan's West and South Darfur states have pushed the central government to send military reinforcements to the 2 states. The Sudanese Foreign Ministry reiterated in a statement that government will not relent in its responsibility to protect civilians and provide security in Darfur region. The clashes started on January the 16th after one person was killed during a fight between 2 citizens in El Geneina. And from the north to East Africa, in Uganda, opposition leader BOBI Wine, who is under de facto house arrest by the military, filed an arbitrary detention complaint to the United Nations. He said Nigerian human rights lawyer Femi Falana has filed a complaint on his behalf to the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Arrest. Wine's residence in Kampala has been surrounded by the army since last week Friday, a day after the presidential elections. Longtime President Yoweri Museveni was re-elected with almost 59% of the vote, followed by 38-year-old Wine with roughly 35%. Wine said he will legally contest the result of the elections, with which he alleged widespread fraud during the poll, which was seen as Uganda's first election in which there was a real threat to Museveni rule.
I am very confident that we defeated the dictator by far. I call upon all Ugandans to reject the blackmail. We have certainly won this election, and we've won it by far. General Museveni and his small clique of oppressors are trying yet again to impose themselves on the people of Uganda. The people of Uganda will and must reject the blatant usurpation of their will and their voice. I want to ask all Ugandans to remain firm and confident that through this election we have spoken, and we have spoken clearly.
Well, still on Wednesday, the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization has called for more vigilance in the effort to combat desert locusts in the Horn of Africa, despite significant progress being made. FAO'S Director of Emergencies and Resilience, Dominic Bajon, made the call, warning against complacency and stressing that threats still persist. At virtual press conference, Bajon said 1.6 million hectares of land have been treated since the beginning of operations to fight the pest. He said national capacities in the affected countries have been augmented through the deployment of surveillance and control capacities, but quickly added that the situation was not over. In his contribution, FAO's senior locust forecasting officer Keith CRESSMAN said the swarms migrated to northern Kenya and southern Ethiopia as forecasted and are moving west. He, however, stressed that the situation remains extremely serious, but noted that countries are much better prepared, much more experienced than they were a year ago.
Early April coincides with the seasonal rains in Kenya, in southern Ethiopia, as well as with the planting period. So this is a cause of concern, and this is also why it's extremely important that the control operations, that as Dominique mentioned, are not disrupted. No, in terms of, yes, the forecast for 2021 compared to 2020, no, it's less dire, is the short answer. And the reason is, first of all, that the locust populations, there's less swarms than there were 1 year ago. And that's, of course, due to those control operations that have been going on since then, and that increased upscaling of those operations. So the situation remains serious, certainly. I don't want to water that down. It remains extremely serious, but certainly I don't think we're in such a dire situation as we were 1 year ago, because the countries are much better prepared, much more experienced than they were.
We'll move to Kenya, where scientists have raised an alarm on a coronavirus variant they say differs from the one spreading in South Africa and Britain. About 10 investigators from the Kenyan Medical Research Institute discovered the COVID-19 mutation. Principal investigator and researcher Charles Agoti said the variant is unique to Kenya and was detected in a batch of samples taken from Taita Taveta County, located in the southeastern part of the country. Agoti said the variant will not have an impact on the effectiveness of new coronavirus vaccines. It's time for us to quickly go for another break, and when we come back, we'll bring to you more stories that made headlines on Thursday and, of course, on Friday. Stay with us. Welcome back to Africa Weekly. Time for us to take a look at stories that made the headlines on Thursday and not forgetting to on Friday. In Ethiopia on Thursday, a Belgium-based peace-building non-profit organization reported the killing of 750 people in an attack on a church in Tigray. The attack was detailed in the January 9th situation report of the Europe External Programme with Africa, EEPA. The non-profit organization said people who were hiding in the church were brought out and shot in the square in front of the building. The attack happened at the Meriam Sion Church in Aksum, also known as the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion. The church is located in Tigray, a region in the north that is home to many churches and monasteries, both also beset by conflict. In Libya, the International Organization for Migration and the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees said at least 43 people died and 10 rescued in a shipwreck off the Libyan coast. Well, according to reports, the boat left Zawiya, 50 kilometers west of the capital, and capsized due to strong waves after its engine broke down a few hours after starting the journey. The survivors stated that the victims, all of whom were from West Africa, came from countries such as Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria, Ghana, and Gambia, and they specified that they were rescued and taken to the Libyan coastal town of Zouara. From Libya, we move to Ghana, where authorities arrested suspects behind an alleged baby harvesting and child trafficking syndicate operating at health facilities in the country. It followed months of investigations that also led to the rescue of 2 babies. Ghanaian authorities said some of the mothers were told their babies died after their delivery, or those who could not take care of their newborns were encouraged to sell them. The suspects included 2 medical doctors, 4 nurses, 2 mothers, 2 social welfare officers, and a traditional birth attendant. 2 babies were sold to undercover investigators for about $5,000 each. A joint investigation by the Ghana Medical and Dental Council and the Economic and Organized Crime Office led to the arrest of the suspects. Well, still on Thursday, the United Nations Population Fund said Vesico Vaginal Vitsula, VVF, is undignified to women and girls. VVF is an abnormal opening between the bladder and the vagina that results in urinary incontinence. Country representative of UNFPA Nigeria, Ula Muller, said such a health condition is capable of stigmatizing women or girls if not given proper intervention. She also expressed UNFPA's willingness to bring justice to women in accordance with its mandate to end gender-based violence. Muller, who empathized with millions of women, especially in crisis areas, said UNFPA would continue to provide humanitarian interventions.
Fistula, I think, is one of the most devastating conditions a woman can live with. It is a condition that only impacts on women. It leads to huge stigmatization and marginalization, and it is a sign of a failed health system. Fistula is preventable, and Nigeria has one of the biggest caseloads in the world. We have to end it. It is undignified for a woman to live with fistula. She will lose her place in society and is completely stigmatized and marginalized, excluded from her community. We can do better than that, and we have to do better than that. It is so closely linked, of course, with access to family planning is a key intervention to prevent fistula.
Libya, Niger, and Zimbabwe recovered their rights to vote this week at the United Nations General Assembly after paying off part of their debts to the organization. Deputy UN spokesman Farhan Haq, without indicating how much was paid by each country, said they paid enough to allow them vote in the General Assembly. To regain their right to vote without paying off their total debt, Libya, Niger, and Zimbabwe had to pay the UN $705,391, $6,733 and $81,770 respectively. Iran, the Central African Republic, Congo, Brazzaville, and South Sudan were also deprived of the right to vote last week. The UN's budget is around $3.2 billion per year. And we move on now to Friday. The Central African Republic declared a state of emergency as armed groups tried to lay siege to the capital, Bangui. It will last for 15 days and allow the authorities to detain suspects without the authorization of prosecutors. Rebel factions now control most of the country and are calling for the resignation of President Faustin Archange Touadéra, who won December's election. Last week, the rebels launched attacks on the capital suburb, but withdrew after an intervention by the UN peacekeeping force. The fighting has forced nearly 60,000 people to flee the country. Meanwhile, in Egypt, the House of Representatives also approved a presidential decree extending a nationwide state of emergency for 3 more months. The General Committee of the House said the decision is aimed at dealing with the ongoing dangerous health and security conditions in the country. According to the decree, the armed forces and the police will take necessary measures to fight terrorism and its financing, maintain security nationwide, protect public and private properties, and preserve the lives of citizens. The state of emergency dated back to 2017 following 2 church bombings that killed at least 45 people. It has since been constantly renewed in accordance with the constitution. And in Mozambique, the European Union's top diplomat Josep Borrell said the EU may help train Mozambican troops to help step up the fight against Islamist militants. Portugal's Foreign Minister Augusto Santos Silva made the announcement while representing Borrell on a 3-day visit to Mozambique. After meeting President Filipe Nyusi, Silva said the president had been very clear in identifying the areas where increased security cooperation could immediately benefit Mozambique. The Portuguese diplomat said EU support might also be extended to the Agency for the Integrated Development of the North. A gifted Senegalese student studying in France, Diary So, reappeared after she went missing. The 20-year-old, in a letter shared with the government minister, said she was on a little break to regain her sense. She said her failure to show up for school on January the 4th was not about overwork or madness or the desire for freedom. So was declared missing when she did not return to school in Paris after the Christmas holidays, causing concern in Senegal and France. French prosecutors had opened an investigation into her disappearance. Ms. So won 2 awards as Senegal's best student and has been studying at the prestigious Louis Le Grand School. She studies physics, chemistry, and also engineering. And that's all we have for you on today's episode of Africa Weekly. Join me again next week, same time, for stories that will make the headlines across the continent. Thanks for watching. I am Joe Hansen.